Вот это вот парни ЧВК «Вагнер», которые погибли сегодня. Еще кровь свежая. Сними всех.
Russia's top mercenary is turning on Moscow again with a vengeance.
Которые не дают нам
Wagner
боеприпасы.
boss Yevgeny Prigozhin screaming at President Putin's defense minister and army chief of staff, accusing them of killing his troops in Bakhmut by starving them of ammunition.
We are pulling out of Bakhmut. We have only 2 or so kilometers left to capture out of 45.
Hours later, an ultimatum: send ammo or he'll pull his troops out of Bakhmut, just as they are close to taking it. Also troubling for the Kremlin, Prigozhin hired Mikhail Mizintsev as a Wagner deputy commander. Until last week, he was Russia's deputy defense minister. It hints at a pending Wagner-Kremlin showdown. Ukraine's military spokesman says Bakhmut could be at a turning point if Russia doesn't fix its ammunition supply problem. He also says that Prigozhin cannot afford to continue losing troops at this rate. If he does, the spokesman says, Wagner will be destroyed. Prigozhin, he says, has no option but to pull out. Prigozhin's machinations having no impact on the fighting around the devastated city Friday. Both sides still feeding men into the front lines, known as Ukraine's meat grinder. And the fighting not just on the battlefield. In Turkey, a Russian diplomat rips down the Ukrainian flag and is quickly punched at a parliamentary assembly intended to get both sides to agree an extension to the UN-brokered Black Sea grain deal. Russia's diplomats also hitting out at the United States. Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Rybakov announcing the US and Russia are on the verge of open armed conflict, a further escalation of recent unsubstantiated Kremlin rhetoric, claiming the United States directed Ukraine to fly drones over the Kremlin in an attempt to assassinate President Putin, an allegation both Kyiv and Washington categorically deny. Nick Robertson, CNN, Eastern Ukraine.
All right, let's talk more about what's happening at the Kremlin and beyond. Steve Hall is joining us right now. He's a CNN national security analyst and former CIA chief of Russia operations. Steve, great to see you. I mean, what do you think that the Wagner commander is doing here? I mean, it would seem suicidal that he would be so outspoken and critical of the Kremlin like this.
Yeah, Fred, let's start with what he's not doing. So he's not really mourning his troops. He has no great concern for the corpses that were piled around him in that particular video. I mean, he is the one who is espousing these meat grinder tactics. So he's not making a plea out of the humanitarian part of his heart. What he is doing is a power play. He's seeing how far he can extend his power in today's Russia. And it is surprising that Putin is giving him, in my view, as much running room as he has. But you have to understand that the way that the Russian system works, it's extremely Byzantine. A lot of it goes on behind closed doors. A lot of it, Putin sort of stands back and it's a dog eat dog, last man standing, and they are all men. A last man standing kind of thing to determine who the next wave of leadership is going to be. And Prigozhin might be making a play for that, Fred.
But it seems like it would be embarrassing for the Kremlin because it's exposing some real vulnerabilities in the group that it has been leaning on, particularly in Bakhmut.
Yeah, it is a little bit of it's a stretch. And it'll be interesting to see how Putin handles this. But, the other thing is there's not a whole lot of room for Putin to maneuver in here. I mean, he's got a losing situation on the battlefield. If Prigozhin follows through on his threat and pulls his forces out, really, regardless whether there's forces that come back in, it could be a big setback for Bakhmut and Russia on the battlefield, which is indeed embarrassing to Putin. But, he doesn't have a whole lot of options left. It's not working with the current military leadership or the former generals that he's had. So, I think to a certain extent, Putin is kind of trying to figure out what the next move is here, and there's just not a lot of good ones.
Okay, and then let's talk about that, alleged drone attack. I mean, Moscow is implicating the U.S., and Ukraine in that drone attack on the Kremlin this week. Or in your view, is this another case of some, Russian anti-war, anti-Kremlin group that is trying to shake up the Kremlin?
Yeah, that's another fascinating question. So first of all, I'm not a big believer or subscriber to the theory that this is a Russian false flag operation, that they did this themselves. I mean, that really shows weakness if you can't protect your own airspace around the Kremlin. And really, does Putin need any further excuse to, to shoot more Ukrainians or to launch more artillery? No. So yeah, is there this a set of groupings of partisans or guerrillas inside of Russia that are actually striking out against Russian infrastructure and the Russian government? Things had been blowing up recently besides the stuff that was happening over the Kremlin. You've had fuel depots. You had a very nationalistic war blogger who was attacking a car bomb, recently, and who did that? So you do have to ask, and I think the Kremlin is probably asking, do we have a problem inside of Russia that isn't necessarily Ukraine? The FSB, the Internal Intelligence Service, would be in charge, and they're usually very good at sussing out and finding if there's any groups that are trying to operate against the Kremlin. But yeah, it's something else that Putin has to worry about, Fred.
At the same time, Russia is good about staging things, right? I mean, is it at all possible when you have Russia's deputy foreign minister warning this week that the U.S. and Russia are on the verge of open armed conflict? I mean, is it looking for a reason to, poke at the bear, so to speak, to try and get things started between the U.S. and Russia?
Yeah, Ryabkov is very, very good at, he understands the West very well, especially the United States. And he understands that when the Kremlin starts making accusations against the United States or other NATO partners, that they are actually the ones who are responsible for all this, that we get nervous and that we start talking about, oh my goodness, have we, backed Putin into a corner? That's what they're hoping to do with this. I think the other thing that's going on is they're anticipating the counteroffensive from the Ukrainians that all of us are. And if it doesn't go well for the Russians, I think the line from Putin and the Kremlin is going to be, well, we would have finished off with the Ukrainians had it not been for the Americans who are the ones that were really fighting against here. So I think they're setting up a propaganda line as well.
All right, Steve Hall, good to see you. We'll leave it there for now. Thanks so much.
Sure. Good to be with you.